The skill to build feature X is much less important than the skill to know what other thing out there in the world does feature X.
Hey there, Powderkeg fans. I'm your host, Matt Hunkler, and this is episode 90 of Powderkeg Igniting Startups, the show for entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators building remarkable tech companies in areas decidedly outside of Silicon Valley. Today on the show, you'll hear from two product-minded leaders at Springbuk, one of the fastest growing companies, not just in Indianapolis, but probably the Midwest, maybe even the country. It's really an exciting product because Springbuk is a health analytics and intelligence platform for employers and benefits consultants. Now, that might not sound exciting if you're not in the healthcare space, but it is really amazing what they're doing for HR tech and for healthcare tech. And you're going to hear from two of the engineering and product leaders on the front lines of building the product at Springbuk. Our first guest is Roger Deetz, who has been a longtime member of the Powderkeg community, probably almost a decade at this point. He's led multiple dev teams at Angie's List, converting their legacy platform. Lots of case studies there, and of course they were acquired by HomeAdvisor not too long ago. He's played several roles in tech companies, including designer, developer, architect, leader, and he's now the VP of engineering at Springbuk. Our next guest is Jeremy Leventhal, who is a high-impact leader with 15 years of experience building products and product teams. He's launched two high-growth product divisions from scratch and has a strong focus on innovation in healthcare and health tech. Tons of experience in his career working in health systems, academia, consulting, startups. He's now the Chief Product Officer at Springbuk. And quick bonus, they met a few years ago at Powderkeg Pitch Night right here in Indianapolis, where Powderkeg is headquartered, which is always great to hear. Our next event at Powderkeg is actually Thursday, June 20th at Industry Downtown, where one of the leaders will actually present Springbuk and the latest on their product and kind of what the future looks like. So check that out. If you're not able to be here physically, or if tickets are sold out, which probably they are, you can go to facebook.com/powderkeg to check out the live stream. In this podcast episode, you'll learn about the ins and outs of product teams, how product leaders approach the team's organization, what to build, make the best investments in product, and ultimately build the product teams that flourish and grow. So let's hop right into this conversation about leading product teams with Roger Deetz and Jeremy Leventhal from Springbuk. Hey, thank you both so much for being here. It's good to have you in downtown Indianapolis. I hope you didn't have to travel too far to be here. Where are you guys headquartered and what are you guys building right now? Jeremy, you mind giving us kind of the high level of what the product is?
Sure, yeah. So we're at the Union 525 South Meridian there. Excited to be the first tenant, the anchor tenant of that building. We've started small. We broke down a wall, went to a second room, and now we're busting out from the seams there. So Springbuk overall, though, as a company, is a health intelligence platform. So we're kind of a digital health solution for employers to reduce costs and improve the health of their most valuable asset, their employees.
Yeah.
So it's a great area to be in, a hot time to be in it, and we have a great team that's surrounding it.
Well, I'd love to kind of hear your journey, Jeremy, to being at Springbuk, if you don't mind. Can you kind of give us an idea of your path to Springbuk, maybe starting with your earliest memory of getting interested in product and technology? And then Roger, I would love to hear the same from you. But if you could kick us off.
Big question.
Yeah.
Big meatball.
I know,
question.
Right? Where did it all start?
Where did it all start? I mean, I've always, I think just being a curious person to always ask why is probably where it started. Yeah. So, I loved the...
Did your parents ever find that annoying?
Yeah, they did. Only child. So I'll kind of shout that out, let the world know now. Yeah. Only child. But I'd say I started, not to date myself too far back here, about 16 years ago, working in New York City. And I got an internship at a company that was fortunate enough to say, we want to be working within electronic health records. At the time, it was actually called digital health records. So they had this great idea to build a digital medical record. And I got to kind of do a lot of the groundwork research of going to the New York hospitals, New York Presbyterian, and a bunch of different ones down in Manhattan there to experiment and understand what the problems were. So talking to the head of nursing, talking to the physicians, talking to the pharmacists, physical therapists within the hospital, and saying kind of what are your needs and how would you use a digital digital health record. And
do you like that kind of work? Do you like having all those conversations with these different types of people?
I mean, at the time I did. I still do. A little different than it was, then to now. I think now is a little bit more strategic conversations. Those were just the raw grinding it out, figuring out like what are the problems that these people are having with their current siloed systems. I mean, they had hundreds of these within a hospital. Each department had their own different system. So I just got very interested in like, wow, I can hear what the problems of these people are. I can bring all this research back. I can kind of put it into themes. I can prioritize it, and then I can make a recommendation for what to do. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, product, that's a big part of what product is about. And then you prioritize what it is that you should be doing with all the other things that the business can be doing.
What was one of the biggest lessons you learned in that role?
One of the biggest lessons I think I learned, and this has stuck with me, is you think about electronic health records as they are today, and you just think about physicians.
Right.
There are just a cast of other actors that are around that, and realizing how much the nurses do, and specifically the nursing world, all of the pre-work and then the post-work for the very slim amount of time that the physician comes in. The nurses actually are huge users of this kind of thing, which you might not think. And the way people have built, unfortunately, to date, these electronic health records is around billing. So they're not really suited for the physician or the nurse or any of these supporting cast of actors. And
that explains a lot about my doctor's visits.
While they're looking at the computer the whole time versus talking to you. And
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's a big lesson.
Yeah.
And so how did you end up doing what you're doing now at Springbuk? And in Indianapolis from New York City.
Indy, so from New York, transplanted out here after high school, went to college at IU, Bloomington, so Hoosier, yep.
Nice.
Officially spent half my life out here in May now, so I'm pretty excited.
Awesome.
My next 18 years are out here, milestone. And, met a girl and had a couple kids and enjoyed a great life out here. And so that's the personal side. But the professional side is Indy is an unbelievable hot spot for digital health. I mean, not just looking at Lilly and the drug companies and Roche, the medical hardware, but the Indiana Health Information Exchange, Regenstrief Institute, the academia around here. I mean, it's really exploded, and it's continuing to explode. So I got a little wind of that. Plus, I love the city, and this is a great place to be able to launch a business. I think as we're seeing from all the great work that you guys are doing, and a lot of the publicity, and venture capitalists flying out of the mountains and coming over to the flyover states, right? There's real great stuff that we're doing here. And it's fun to see that kind of come to fruition and be acknowledged. So, how did I get to Springbuk?
Springbuk's a big part of that. I mean, setting some records in terms of fundraisers, growth. It's a shining example of what's possible here.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it was a risk coming here. I'd say, the two biggest reasons were Rod Reason and Phil Daniels, so our co-founders. Yeah. I mean, they hunted me down, and I was also very interested in what they were doing, but they just sold me on what they were trying to do and the mission. And
what was it about it that really you were like, I gotta make the leap? Because I imagine you weren't working at startups previously, or have you always been?
No, so I kind of had been at a couple startups. My whole career has been in academia. It's been in nonprofit. It's been in consulting, and it's been generally not bigger companies. I don't have all the big names behind my resume, so I feel like I do well in general in the smaller to mid-size with less shackles to do what you want. So I had a great opportunity to form a product division. Innovate Map previously was running the product division here, and there was about 16 people.
They're awesome. We've had them on the podcast before.
Yeah, they're a great team, and we're lucky enough to have Lacey and Christian on our team. Who are the co-leaders of that company. Were actually doing the work for us and leading Springbuk. So they produced a great product that we got to. It was a wonderful handoff, but I really got to make this thing with my own hands. And Rod just said, run free and build this thing up. So it started with just me and a few engineers, 16 people, and it was just a very enticing opportunity, I think, to see I can mold this with my own two hands. So they sold me on the vision. I wanted to do it, and then 16 people to 112, or Roger, where are we? 115, something like that now.
That's awesome.
3 years been quite a ride for where we've been to.
Well, I'm sure you've learned a lot, so I want to dive into that in a minute. But first, Roger, I'm very curious about your story because I think you and I met through the community, I don't know, maybe
probably 10 years ago.
9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up at Springbuk. Again, First memory of technology.
Sure.
I want to hear this.
Glimmer,
First memory of
glimmer
tech
in your
for Roger.
eye. Yeah.
Well, I grew up on a dairy farm in northern Indiana.
Full of tech.
Exactly.
Busting at the seams.
And my first exposure to tech was actually computer camp when I was in 5th grade, and we spent the summer formatting floppy disks for both Apple, PC, and Commodore. So I will
actual floppy or like the 3.5 inch.
The 5 1/4.
Literally
Yeah. So
floppy.
I will shamelessly date myself because I'm really proud of the length of time I've had in this career.
Yeah,
So
you earned your stripes.
right. I also, like Jeremy, was an IU grad, studied business, and then my first job after college was at Install Shield near Chicago. And
Nice.
so some old timers might remember the Install Shield wizard installing games on your computer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure some of my highly questionable code is still running on billions of Windows machines around the world.
Explains a lot.
I feel safe knowing that, just to be clear.
Yeah. It makes me nervous. This is why I'm a Mac user.
Indeed. So after that time at Install Shield, I moved to Indy circa 2004 to kind of get closer to family. And coming from Chicago to Indy around 2004, kind of my first experience in the tech world was like, oh my, what have I done? But it has been so awesome to see this community get together and rise up, and all of the great stuff that's happened here in the past 15 years or so has really made it so great. And for me personally, I just feel so proud to be part of building this thing as well as reaping its benefits. It's a community unlike any I've seen. So
I feel super lucky to get to ride the wave too. It's been fun.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you broke into tech here in Indy.
Yeah, so my first job was at a medical device sales automation company called No Inc., which was a Rose-Hulman venture, way ahead of its time because we were doing mobile development before the iPhone and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Robert Harris has been on the podcast.
Yep,
here
absolutely.
before, too.
Yeah, Robert and I go way back. He was one of the first people I worked with.
That's awesome.
So I was there a while and then moved on to Double Take, which is now Carbonite. And so I had a little bit of sales experience, like sales software experience at No Inc. Double Take is a pure B2B, kind of desktop software, server software platform. Yep. I was there a while and then moved on to Angie's List, and that was my first B2C kind of large-scale web experience. And while I was there, that was a time that Angie's List really needed to grow explosively and get off of its monolithic architecture. And so me and a handful of folks were kind of the leaders of the platform transformation, which was a multi-year, multi-million-dollar thing that is probably going to be the subject of case studies for years to come. And there were...
How did you find those opportunities? As you kind of went from No Inc. to Double Take to Angie's List, what was kind of were there any common threads for how you were finding that next venture?
Yeah, I was always just looking for the next awesome project. Yeah. I really got the drug in me at Install Shield, where we were building brand new stuff, and then No Inc. was a brand new thing, and Double Take had really taken off at the time I joined, and then Angie's List was really on the cusp of taking off. So I just was always looking for a great company that I believed in, and one that had a great trajectory in front of it, and being able to join at a time when they were getting ready to go was really exciting to me.
Try to find that moment right before ignition when it really blows up into something big.
Yep.
That's smart. What were some of the biggest lessons you learned in those early ventures, good, bad, or ugly?
Really, I think the most important thing is learning what feels right when things are working well, and how to kind of tell when things aren't.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can really only learn with hard knocks, because every company's technology is different, every company's team is different, but learning to listen to that spidey sense of, this is going off the rails, or you know what, this is really crushing it, we need to double down here, that was what I took away from those places.
Anything that people can do to develop that spidey sense without massive failures or massive projects, maybe not always failures.
Sure.
Any thoughts on that? How you could develop some of that sixth sense?
Yeah, well, I think number one, trust your own gut. If it feels good, it's probably working pretty well. And then number two, but even more importantly, trust what your people are telling you. So just talk to the team, talk to the people involved, talk to the other groups and other departments that are interfacing with those people. Like if you're hearing good things and if people have smiles on their faces, like that's a really good sign. And if people are doing a lot of complaining, or if people are seeming anxious, like, well, probably something's not working.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Jeremy, tell me, do you remember when you first met Roger?
Yeah, no, I do. It's funny enough. It was at a Powderkeg event. We were down at the Hi-Fi there.
Nice.
And Rod, our CEO, is presenting for the business, doing the kind of quick, 5-minute pitch.
Cool.
And
I remember that pitch.
Bumped into this guy over here.
Yeah.
Struck up a conversation, as many people do at those events, and kind of understood where he was at. And we happened to kind of be looking, at the time I was leading product and engineering, and we happened to be looking for a really solid additional leader to that team. So we were lucky enough to kind of continue talking and having a few lunches throughout the year and finding the right time for him. Obviously, Angie's List was going through a lot of transformation at that time, and definitely knew that Roger was interested in a move. But I think seeing where things were shaking out. So I don't know. What did you think? I'm curious on the other receiving end of that message.
Do you remember that?
Because I'm a hunter when I go out there.
And I remember it very clearly. I remember the pitch. I remember Rod's pitch and being really impressed, just like Jeremy said a minute ago, being impressed with Rod himself, being impressed with the idea of Springbuk. It's when you hear it sort of presented to you, you're like, that's an amazing idea, and that's a super important problem to solve. So I was already intrigued. And then I also got to meet another very intriguing person in Jeremy, who anyone who knows Jeremy knows that he doesn't do a soft sell. He goes straight to the hard sell. And so it was
Goes
fortunate.
to the close.
Exactly. It was fortunate to keep the conversation going for a while, and just the timing needed to work out, and then eventually it did, and it's been great.
I'm really happy to hear that, and I'm glad you guys stayed in touch. I know it's just as easy to let things kind of fizzle out and lose touch with people. Sounds like you were pretty intentional about that, Jeremy. Was there did you have like a master plan, or was it kind of, tell me a little bit about how you stayed in touch through the hire, because I think a lot of people, whether you're a professional and looking to make a move, like understanding that relationship, or you're an employer and understanding how you build that talent pipeline, I think just understanding a little bit more of that relationship could be helpful.
Yeah, sure. I mean, master plan sounds pretty professional.
Yeah.
It was probably more of just, I think, as a leader, I'm sure Roger thinks the same way here. I think you're always trying to keep relationships up, and that can mean two things. One is just keeping up good in the community and understanding what people are doing, and are you using techniques that are ahead of the curve, behind the curve? Are there other things that you can learn? So going to the events, going to Product Tank, right? Doing all the different things.
Yeah.
But I think probably the other angle just with Roger is, how do you when you have an idea of what you're going to build, how do you kind of keep people interested in the idea of what you're going to build, and then also say, like, I'm looking over the next 6 months, 3 months, year to build out this thing, and how do you get as many great candidates that you're talking to in the pipeline, knowing that hopefully you get lucky enough to get one of them.
Right.
So we really just kind of kept in touch through some lunches and phone calls, and I tried to keep him abreast of what was going on in the business. So he said that he heard the initial sell from Rod. I wanted to kind of keep feeding him where we're at and where we're growing, and see if those are interest points for him. So as Roger said, he likes to find that explosive moment in the company, and I kind of felt that from him. So I was trying to give him the bits and pieces of, all right, well, when you come on, I expect that we might form a whole new team, and that's your decision. So giving him the pieces that I know that he wanted to do, but that we also needed. So yeah, I mean, I think, again, community plus always recruiting is just something built in to a good leader that you always just need to make time for, probably each week, each month.
Sure. I appreciate you sharing that, just because it can feel like magic sometimes and total happenstance. But it sounds like you're pretty intentional about it. Maybe not master plan level of intentional, but and it sounds like, Roger, too, you're pretty intentional about figuring out what that next move might be like, and then even joining the team. Do you remember what that was like? Joining on at this, I don't know if you'd say it was a startup at the time or more of like a scale up, but
how many people were here when you joined? What number were you?
My number, I think, is 73. I think there's maybe 65 or so, like that.
Okay, nice. So when you joined the team, tell me a little bit about what you were doing and what that was like at that moment in time.
Yeah, so I was coming into a again, a company that was clearly on the up trajectory. I think I had started not long after the actual Series B had been announced, so it was a really exciting time to get in and meet the folks. I knew there was a great core there because obviously there was a great product, and you don't raise that kind of money without being able to convince folks you've got a good team and a good vision. So at that point, it was really then just meet everyone, try to figure out what is the next moves we needed to make to really operate at scale, because we were going to go from the growth that got us to that point, but then the expectations were now going to be that much higher for the next level. So figuring out, again, working a lot with Jeremy and Steve Caldwell, who was on the technology team at the time, or is still on the technology team.
Still is a good man.
Still is a good man. And working with Jeremy and Steve to figure out like what does the team look like, what are the spots we need to fill, what are the process moves we need to make to become a real well-oiled machine, and then, as we said just a moment ago, like getting into recruiting and building that pipeline of folks to bring on, and figuring out what were some of the right technical investments we needed to make to keep performance up and stability and all those sorts of things. So
you joined a lot of teams over your 16 careers. You've been involved in some really cool projects and products. Any advice to people who are joining an engineering team, what to do in those first few weeks or months?
Yeah, first, just listen to everyone, meet everyone you can, listen to everyone, particularly if you're going to be in a position of engineering leadership, meet all the engineers, but even other folks in sales and marketing and customer support, and meet everyone you can, listen to everyone you can. You
just walk around desk to desk, hi, I'm Roger, nice to meet you.
I'm a little more introverted than that, so I usually start with a calendar invite or a Slack message, but fundamentally, that's where you got to get to.
Cool.
And then once you've kind of got your arms around on the people, then I like to go to first principles on the technology and just read the code, read the database. Like I don't, in my day job today, I don't do a lot of coding, but you need to have empathy for the folks that are building the machine, and the devil is in the details. So even if you're not going to do a bunch of individual contribution in the code, it never hurts to read it and spend time with it. So those are the things I like to do.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that advice and perspective. Jeremy, as you're kind of building this product team, tell me about how that role has changed since you joined the team.
Oh my gosh, yes. From starting as a team of one to adding my next in command in product, who was our product manager, product designer, QAing at the time, also has some back end or also has some front end code experience. I mean, the guy's amazing, Jason Kinsley. So just the one and the two, we're big believers in keep doing it until it breaks. And I was actually going to bring that up as you were talking about when you came in with 60 people. We were probably, when you came in, Roger, with 60 people, doing what was at the time now breaking from what we were doing probably with 25, 30 people. So you walked into what was probably at its max pressure limit, but with 60 people in the org now, total, not just engineering. Starting out with us though, I mean, just slowly adding areas as we need them. And I think that probably does two things. One is it's a great thing for the business, and capital-wise, it's a smart thing to do, but you let those people learn everything that you need to know. And in product, you need to be incredibly versatile and know a lot of different things, as you know. But I think two, it also allows the people that as you're building it out to say, these are things I want to be doing in the business, these are things I don't want to be doing, and then let those people kind of grow up themselves and then recommend, I don't want to be doing this thing anymore, I think we should hire this other person. So it was really interesting starting doing everything, being in the app every single day, triaging every client issue, building every item in the roadmap, to now, let's fast forward now to a team at scale, and we have 115 people in the org, product and engineering. What are we, 40 something within that?
Yeah.
What's really cool, just again, fast forwarding all the way up to today, is we have some top down things that Roger and I are very interested in doing and consulting with the rest of the leadership team and our thoughts about where the business is going. Cool. And we do a hybrid model of mixing and matching that with what are the teams thinking? So the autonomy of those teams, and they're seeing things that we don't see at all, that are a lot of the right things to be doing. So I think combining the behaviors of the top-down and, if you will, bottom-up approach to find that really happy medium and that happy middle is creating this process that we're just excited to see playing out. I mean, we said this at our roadmap review meeting, which is a bunch of product and engineering and project management people, just seeing this world work between the two and allowing the teams to find the rocks, as we call them, of what they're accountable for in the upcoming quarter, set those deadlines for themselves, and then find that balance of the things that we're interested in doing to move the business forward. We found a great place that really is playing into the overall culture and the people that are there. I think it mirrors that thing that's been hard to describe, as we know, as culture, that you've seen from us. So.
Oh, and I'd love to dig into that a little bit deeper. But curious, as you scaled this team, any high growth tech company is going to hit some bumps along the way, make some missteps along the way, and the goal is to obviously correct the misstep and get it back on track. Any of those that kind of happen along the path of growing this team out at Springbuk?
Yeah, I think I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Roger. I mean, I think, and I mentioned a little bit of this even in a meeting this morning, but I think as you get to each level, you're trying new things out and you're doing the best you can with the information that you have. So you see expanding of the org, you see contracting of the org, and I don't mean like letting people go. I just mean in terms of reorganization.
Yeah.
And I think reorgs are tough across the board. I mean, you look at Glassdoor, people are like, the leadership doesn't know what they're doing in various companies, and a lot of that's just attributed to growing pains. There's certain people that are built for them, there's certain people that are not built for them. So we try to, number one, hire leaders that can go through it and handle the growing pains and put on that proud, great face on the other side. But we also need to hire the individual workers of the company that are doing the work to be able to handle those growing pains as well. And they have questions, and we're in an open and transparent culture. So I think build Ford tough for the for the slogan of people as they continue.
They're not
to
a
come
sponsor, but
right.
We'll give you that one.
Not
for
a
free
sponsor
for
today.
Yeah.
I'm a car guy. Sorry, but
Nice.
I think as long as you hire that pedigree of people and you get used to those behaviors, I think that's what's made us as strong as we are. What do you think, Roger?
Yeah, I think the main lessons learned, you might call them bumps in the road, but I think really are just around scaling those communication paths, because the communication path that works when you can all sit in the same room and poke your head up and talk to someone doesn't work when you're spread across two halves of the building. And so finding a way to encourage the transparency, encourage the free exchange of information, but also just being efficient about it. And once you get to the point where you're spread across two halves of the building, not everybody can be in all the same room at the same time, and so the decision-making process kind of changes, and so I think just working through those, and again, it's been at the Springbuk team lead level and leadership level, we've got a great attitude to work together and figure that out. So that's been part of the journey.
I feel like one last one now, and this is probably an interesting topic, could be its own little podcast. Making the really tough decisions about what you build in the near term versus paying that kind of longer term debt, and when to make those decisions. And you can have the best philosophical conversation in the world about, well, what if we made this great decision to make, our data pipeline is a huge initiative for the company right now, and making that thing the smartest, most robust, scalable data pipeline possible. What if we made that decision to really invest in that 2.5 years ago? Where would we be as a company? And some of our fundamentals might look a little bit better. However, we wouldn't have probably invested in some of the innovation, some of the shinier stuff, some of the things that are differentiating us today, which that's a really important thing in our industry, to be differentiated and look different than our competitors. That's even why we're called Springbuk, to be an agile, nimble kind of animal that's able to quickly attack things and put things together. So I think for us, and Roger, again, love your viewpoint on this, but we made a lot of trade-offs. So we built up a lot of this debt. I think thankfully Roger joined and was an accountant and began to look at that debt and learn how to pay it off. But a lot of those trade-offs are really tough things for a company as you're scaling up. Am I going to make this move that I know I might have to rewrite it in 6 months to a year? Totally.
Yeah.
But it's going to allow us to either land this big client or a client wants to grow significantly. And how do you make those decisions? So I feel like that's a really tough spot when you're thinking about that growth and challenge.
Well, and you mentioned just how nimble you have to be when you're a high growth tech company growing at the pace that you are. That means a lot of people might not identify with seeing themselves work at that company or working well in that kind of an environment. But what would you say to let's say a software engineer who's earlier in their career? What kind of benefit do you get by working at a company like that? And Roger, you've been at a few. So what kinds of benefit have you seen by working in a higher growth tech company?
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit is you get exposure to all different aspects of the business and aspects of the process that you might not if you were joining a large operation that already has an opinion about how they work.
Yeah.
And so when you're in on maybe not the ground floor or an early floor of a company like that, you either intentionally are able to shape or you are unintentionally soaking up all of the tools you need to be able to shape it. And so that's I think a blessing for any new engineer to join a place where the processes are being built, the decisions about the technology are being made, the priority decisions about the product are being made, because you're seeing all that, and that knowledge just pays off big time throughout the rest of your career.
But also when the processes are built, the opportunity for our team to say, this isn't working, or we could be doing this better. And throughout, I think, Springbuk's history, I think that's where we've seen people flourish and grow. So there's people that want to come to their job and clock in at 8 and leave at 4, and there's plenty of companies around town that you can do that. And that's
wait a second, there are.
That's a great lifestyle, and no knocking any of those.
I'm
I just
totally
think,
kidding. That sounds terrible.
It's weird. We're all sitting in a room. That's not our universe, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we all expect from all of our generation. Like spending 20 plus and minus years is like, I think that's just what people want these days. They want to be able to write their own ticket and feel like they're owning their own universe, but they're also part of a team, and they're working jointly towards something, whether it's building the product or building the process around it.
Well, it seems like the role of software engineer is changing so quickly. What are some of the ways that you're seeing that role change as the industry changes, as technology continues to change at a faster and faster pace?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing is that the skill to build feature X is much less important than the skill to know what other thing out there in the world does feature X. Because even 10 or 15 years ago, there weren't so many services, there weren't so many gems, there weren't so many things, and so everybody built their own logging, and everybody built their own payment gateway, and everybody built their own whatever. And now, like, there's no need to do that because there's so many services available.
Yeah.
And so being a smart engineer and a smart technologist to know, hey, this is core to our product, we should build that not core to our product, we need to find something that can help out. And that's always been true to some extent, but like right now it's more true than
Never
ever.
True, right? Yeah, that's a good insight. Anything to add there?
I think there's a lot of different models in town. I mean, Salesforce went to the SDM, software development managers, or the Scrum Masters model.
Yeah.
I think there's cases in different companies based off of different skill sets and the type of work you're doing to say, well, the engineers should also be doing X, Y, Z. I mean, for us, what it means is let's let the engineers focus as hardcore as they can on the work and support them with the best cast of people that built that product. So the additional thing for me on the engineer side, I think is number one, being able to use that supporting cast and that support system, but also being able to...
What's that supporting cast look like?
Oh, so it's your project manager, which is our Scrum Master. It's your product designer, and it's your product manager today.
Yeah.
We also have a product marketing manager. So the more that we create these hybrid teams, and really everyone is chipping in on everything from idea, design creation, scoping and size, QA, we see that pitch in, and then we see the best quality products with the least errors.
Yeah. What's it like working in product and engineering at Springbuk? Like, are you shipping new code every month? How often are you guys all getting together in the same room? How are you guys communicating? Can you give me kind of a snapshot of what that... I know there's not a typical day, but...
Yeah, well, we've got a really strong thing going here, and I will brag on the team and our process all day. So that's a question I'm pleased to answer. We have basically 5 delivery teams. We work in 2-week sprints. They're all on the same schedule, so we do get everyone together at the end of a sprint to do a department-wide demo, show off what we did, talk about what's next. It's my favorite meeting of a 2-week period to see all the great work that's going out there.
Nice.
And to answer your question about shipping, we ship to production probably 5, maybe 10 times a day. So as soon as the build is green, as soon as it's gotten a couple code reviews and a QA sign off, it goes when it's ready. And of course, for larger things, the product team controls when we launch that with feature flags and all that. But in terms of getting code out the door, being able to take risks and recover quickly, I mean, we're shipping, hundreds of times in a sprint.
That's great. Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think even zooming out a little bit farther, that's the execution
That's
delivery,
engineering,
which
yeah.
we just are all so proud, and it's exciting just to see that work. And again, big testament to the team for that.
Totally.
I think zooming out to some of the process we've built around how do we intake ideas through all of the various sources? How do we prioritize those ideas? How do we bring it to the joint prod tech team to discuss, as we talked about earlier when we do kind of our roadmap reviews? Some of that process has been, again, the best process I've ever worked in. So not only are we getting to help define it, not only are we getting to experience it, we're getting to learn from it and from the team who then wants to make it better. And I think that well-oiled machine is just churning out from idea to full continuous integration, continuous delivery. You're just seeing things happen fast.
Yeah.
We're trying to adopt more betas and find friendly customers who are interested to just get access to stuff early and give us feedback. Our team just did like 5 user interviews on like this major feature in the last like 2 days, literally.
Wow.
And so just, again, seeing that nimbleness, it's really exciting because you asked back in the early days, we just didn't have the resources to say, let's go focus on this. Let's just go find 5-10 people to go test it with.
Right.
And today it's like we can say, let's go do that. And then the machine works in that direction.
Do you still feel like you're moving like a startup in terms of using lean startup process?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, startup. It's such a hard word, and sometimes it's used just to attract people. I mean,
Sure.
we're in full scale up mode.
Yep.
I think the startup culture mentality, which I'll just say is like a good people mentality, really.
Yeah.
I think that is just working well, and it works across the board. I mean, everyone. If you're in sales, you might get frustrated with some things. Like, for example, we don't put stuff in demo that isn't ready.
Yeah.
Our demo, actually, we launch, so it goes QA, and then it hits production. After it's in production, we'll put it into demo.
Okay.
So you can imagine sales being like, well, where's my stuff? I need to sell 6 months ahead. And we've created a culture by which we do sort of fuzzy roadmaps. We share things that we have high levels of certainty with our clients. Roger and I are very, very tight on, we're about to share something that might be coming up in a quarter. What's our probability of it getting something out there that we can get in people's hands so that we can do what we say we're going to do.
Yeah, that's some good discipline.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's taken a while to get there. We had to change a bit culture, how things were previously run to do that.
Can
I think
you talk
most
to me
things
a little
are
bit about that? I mean, I imagine every startup deals with this, where you've got sales saying, "I want to," or sales even going rogue, not even asking permission. Just, I've certainly been at startups like that.
That would never happen.
startups. Yeah, beyond startups, probably. We
To
know
be
some
clear,
big companies.
we all love salespeople. they help keep the lights on, but sometimes can go rogue.
No, I mean, our sales team is amazing too.
Yeah, totally.
I think originally you started out, and when you do start really small in the union, you go to Startup Alley, you see, 1-person companies, 10-person
Right.
companies. You do have to sell ahead. Period. I'll say that. Early on, you got to sell your wireframes that you've drawn up on a napkin. Like, you have to sell ahead early on. I think you just need to find the right balance of what you sell ahead, to whom you're selling ahead to. Are you shaking hands about it? Are you inking it into a performance guarantee in your contract? What is the client actually expecting? Are they expecting the full feature, or are they expecting progress? You got to get down to the real details, or you can end up in a mess and you can lose customers. So I think just shifting that over time from sales-led to a hybrid of product, sales-led, idea portal, which is anyone in the company can submit an idea and they can upvote it. We use AHA for that.
Nice.
And then also allowing all the ideas to come from both leadership and from the individual team. We just have a very holistic approach to how we think about building up product and the ideas and vetting them.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a lot about this indirectly, but what makes a good startup culture? So if there were one thing you could kind of point to, or one thing that comes to mind, having worked at several startups, what makes a good startup culture? To you. This is a personal answer, right?
In my opinion, I think the one thing I would always go back to through my whole career, you could say so much on culture, I would just say trust. And I would say trust and the faith in the people that you hire, the people who report to you, the people who are your peers. And everything else that comes with culture, and whether you communicate or not, whether you have a process or not, all that stuff, trust trumps, I believe, every one of those things. I think if you have good trust and you have good people, you can overcome almost anything else.
Yeah, and as a very closely related item to that, I would say the transparency and the ability for people to have a voice in whatever the thing is, right? And I think to me that's the big differentiator from when you think of like megacorp, where everything rolls downhill and everything's defined, and no one really feels like they can affect change in that kind of organization, to a startup where everyone is affecting change all the time, and hopefully right, and hopefully for the best, and you're transparent with the folks on the team doing that, and you're trusting one another. To me, having an environment where everyone is encouraged and coached to affect change, like that's what makes a great startup culture.
I really like those. Both good answers. Mm-hmm. And has Springbuk written down its core values? Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a favorite core value?
They're written in all of our rooms. Oh man, I guess for me, raise the bar, I think, is the coolest one that we have. I don't know if Roger, you were gonna say a different one.
Yeah, I was gonna go with win together, so it's a good tag team effort here. I think just the spirit of we work with each other, both within engineering, within product and engineering, with product engineering and sales and marketing and finance and everything. And we really do take that win together attitude seriously.
I love that. I like raise the bar too.
Yeah, raise the bar is just such a cool one. The team sort of took out some of the generic stuff, and someone, I think, said that term one day, and maybe they read it in an article somewhere. Yeah. But just in everything that we do, not even in just the work that you're doing, but when you're thinking about building a new process, when you're thinking about speaking somewhere, like our other one is Never Settle, which is about growth, internal growth. How do I challenge myself? I think it all still comes back to, though, how are you raising the bar? How are you raising the bar professionally? How are you raising the bar personally? For everything that you do as the person that you show up to work with.
I like that a lot. Let's talk a little bit about career, finding a career in engineering, in product, and managing that career. Because, I'll start with you, Roger, because you've had a very interesting career with a lot of companies I'm very familiar with. A lot of engineers, I don't want to generalize, really any role, a lot of people just put their head down and they're not really paying attention to what else is going on in the community, what else is going on in their industry. They're doing their job there the best they can, but don't necessarily have their peripherals open. It seems like, just based on the fact that I've seen you active in the community for the last 10 years, that you haven't been that just only put your head down and keep blinders on. It seems like you kind of are keeping your eye on the horizon at all times.
Sure, yeah. Well, just for me personally, the most important thing is finding mentors and finding folks that can kind of take you to that next level. And I know that's advice that you hear often, but that doesn't make it any less true. And so for me, at every job I've had, every role I've had someone who really was mentoring me and pulling me along to things. And sometimes that was intentional, like within the company, and sometimes it was accidental. And so getting out there, meeting folks, being engaged in the community, I myself consider myself introverted, and that's not unique among engineers. And so sometimes that maybe doesn't come naturally, but just being out there to give yourself the chance to meet folks and run into people that could become a mentor or provide some kind of help down the line. Like, I think that's just the single best thing you can do.
Well, you mentioned being an engineer at events. How should you network at events? What are some of the lessons you've learned?
Don't be afraid to say hi. Don't be afraid to brag about yourself. Don't be afraid to listen to somebody when they give you the hard sell if they come up after the event. It's tempting sometimes maybe just to kind of like hang out with the folks that but don't be afraid to just have a conversation.
Is there a right way to brag about yourself?
I personally, feel like it's a good look to be confident but not cocky, and so there's nothing wrong with confidently explaining things you've done in your career or things that you're proud of. Like, when I'm hiring folks, I really love it when a candidate is confidently being proud of something they've built, right? Most people become engineers because they love building stuff, and you should absolutely be proud of that. And there's no shame in speaking up and telling someone how proud you are about something you're a part of or something you built.
You know what I love conversely though too? I also love knowing when you built something that was not good.
Yes.
And hearing the humble, honest truth.
Yes, that's that's
great interview question too, just to use, like, really test somebody out there, and if they're like, I don't think I ever have participated in anything that was poor. I mean, come on. I mean,
Right.
you have to know that one thing. That's probably where you learn your most lessons. So,
Absolutely.
I would probably just double down on the mentor thing. I've been very fortunate as well to have great mentors that have helped guide me. But I think the other thing I would add, and for those that know me, they'll probably laugh, but I've written a lot of my own job descriptions throughout my whole career. So I've always continued to find an area in the business and say it's a niche or it's a new area that hasn't been formed, and how do I like write up what this thing is? There's a real need. I've always had a business mind on my shoulders, but I've been like a tech geek on the side and then a product nerd, like the holy trinity mix there of whatever you want to call it. But
you got it.
Yeah,
sure.
I got it for sure. So I think my encouragement would be, people in product come from so many different backgrounds. You might have some tech background. You might be an industry expert in something and you come in. You might be a philosopher. I mean, there's all sorts of different places people come from, but look at what the organization is trying to do and find the right roles. And I think there is no one size fits all product role. It's just a hard thing to do. So what is the company trying to do and where can you best serve it and fit into it? It might be more tech. It might be more subject matter expert. It might be more design based. It might be more project management based, but come in there and don't be afraid to say, this is where I think the organization needs help and I want to do it.
Yeah. Looking at specifically how can you help the opportunity that the organization has, not necessarily this is the work I want to do.
What is the problem with the business?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's the important.
Learn the business. A great product manager knows beyond even their product. How does their product solve a need for their users or customers, the business?
Yeah.
Not just the narrow-minded. You won't be a great product manager if you're just focused on your one area.
Oh, that's a good tidbit. You both mentioned mentors. Is there one mentor or one mentor moment when maybe the right mentor kind of came by and gave you some good advice that you can think of?
I mean, there's plenty. I'm trying to think of the.
Hard to choose.
I'll take one while you're thinking. I'll let you marinate because one
Yeah.
came up to me, and
Cool.
this is one of my funniest mentor stories. So, one of my first mentors, who was lucky enough to be a physician and an informaticist. So
What was their name?
Dr. Doug Martin. So he was an informatics guy as well, but also a family physician. And then he literally wrote the code that created like the Veterans Administration's electronic medical record. So the guy is off the charts amazing. I think literally my third week in, he plucked me out of the informatics program and doing great stuff within there. And I was like, this guy's so amazing. He said, we're going to fire somebody and I want you to come in with me. And I said, why? Why would I want to be in there? Why would I want to do that? And he goes, because you're going to be having to do this when you grow up in this area, when you get more experience. So while it was a horrible, traumatic experience to do,
you're going to have to describe that for me.
The learn. Well, we can't get too detailed about who it was and where.
Fair enough.
While it was a horrible experience to actually like physically think about somebody losing their job, and that's never a fun thing. It is part of life. It's part of what we do. But I think you learn that it is a privilege to be where you are and be able to be working somewhere, wherever that place might be, and know that for all the good times, there's the hard times. So you always need to just understand to keep yourself level and keep yourself humble. That I feel like that experience just gave me like 15 experiences in and of itself from it.
That's a great example. Yeah. Did you think of one, Roger?
Yeah. So I was a little bit of a latent sort of leader in my career. Like I never really saw myself in like official positions of leadership for quite a while. I felt I was more as an engineer or an architect or a designer or whatever. And so kind of
more of an individual contributor.
Right. And so then kind of when I was at Angie's List and some of the major projects were starting to happen, I kind of found myself in leadership adjacent positions, but I wasn't like officially the manager or whatever. And I was kind of complaining about a situation that was happening to one of my mentors there at Angie's List, and he said to me, well, what would you do? And I said, well, this is what we should do. He's like, well, then you just tell those people what to do. And he's like, if you find yourself in a situation where like a group of people needs leadership, like just do it, like step up and do it. And so I was kind of nervous about that because it kind of went against that, I guess maybe lack of confidence I had. But then the next time that thing happened, I did that and people just started doing it. And I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm so curious. And I feel like now that you said that sparked in me, I feel like as mentors, Roger and I, for others in a variety of capacities, one of the things that I do, and I'm sure you do this all the time as well, is when a situation presents itself, I actually ask that same question. Well, what would you do about it? So number
That's a
one,
good question
number
to
one,
ask.
I'm actually genuinely interested to hear what that individual will do. And
Right.
in that case, your mentor was genuinely interested in what you would do.
And what was that mentor's name?
His name is John Hurst.
Nice. Good
Yeah.
shout out. Props.
Yeah, I like how you give the plugs there for
gotta get the
everybody.
plug.
I know.
Sorry, I
got to tell Doug Martin now. I got to tell him to listen to this podcast.
This is how we grow our audience base. One mentor at a time.
Right. No, but then it also gives that person an opportunity to like grow in and of himself. So that was the second part of what I was saying. So just that's a really cool thing. I think that we just do automatically, mechanically. We don't think about very much, but
well, for those that don't do it yet, now's a chance to give it a try. Before we close, Jeremy, you mentioned some of the awesome things happening here in Indianapolis. Roger, I know you spent a lot of your career and most of your tech career here in Indianapolis. What are some of the things you've seen change, and what are you most excited about right now in the indie tech community?
Well, to me, the biggest change is just that the sheer quantity of opportunities. So when I got here in 2004, you had Interactive Intelligence, you had Exact Target, you had Angie's List just kind of barely, and there was a very small number of larger players in town, and that was pretty much it. And now, like we still have a lot of those great big companies here. We've got the scale-ups, we've got all the new stuff coming out of High Alpha and G Beta, and so just the sheer quantity of opportunity has really been awesome.
It's a good time to jump in. Cool. Any advice for someone in the tech community before we hop off here? Literally could be any professional at any level, but one piece of advice that has served you well.
I mean, I feel like just get out in the community, and I'm going to eat my own words here. I have not been as great as Roger in the community. I've just been really focused on my teams and my companies, and one goal of mine just prior to coming to Springbuk was just to get out there and meet more people and try to get to all the various events. So obviously, certainly going to things like Powderkeg and all the different meetups. I mentioned Product Tank earlier.
So many good ones.
I mean, I'm learning from my team even about all the other ones that are expanding, and there seems to be all new burgeoning ones from time to time.
Totally.
But product really has evolved so much. If you even look at the last 3 years, let alone the last 5 years or 15 years, I just don't even know that it was accepted. So I think product managers specifically, my advice is, number one, just read as much as you can, find the best articles everywhere, try to attend some of the great conferences that exist out there, and then try to find in the community your peers and understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. Meet them for coffees in the morning, meet them for beers in the afternoon. And the more that you can do that, I think the more that you get accustomed into your own skin and say, I feel like what we are doing is good, right? And it's kind of double check.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and part and parcel of that, I would say just ask questions. So a lot of companies are going through the same challenges. A lot of companies are having the same technical questions. Even if two engineers are meeting up and just sharing stories about how'd you build this or what kind of problems are you having with this, just ask questions and that'll get a conversation going.
I love that. Thank you. I could ask you questions all day, but that's our time for the show. Thank you both for sharing your stories and being a part of this awesome community.
Thanks for having us.
I really appreciate it.